Okay. Thank you so much for those that are joining us today. We are so excited for you to be here. We welcome you to our Purple Star Campus Support Professional Learning Community and our second session, which is identifying military connected students. Again, if you're new with us, our PLCs are a great way for educators to collaborate with and tap into a network of peers and partners to support military connected students. This is a new PLC that we've designed for school professionals and educators at campuses across Texas that have either earned or are working towards that Purple Star campus designation. Our knowledge sharing model brings together a network of learners, subject matter experts, peers from multiple focus areas for a really holistic approach. You will have the opportunity to identify potential solutions to common challenges related to Purple Star campus programs. So again, thank you for joining us. If you've been with us before, we're excited to have you back. If you're new with us today, we're excited to have you here. We're just going to do a few little introductions of who we are. My name is Nikki Harrison. I'm with the Military Child Education Coalition. You'll commonly hear us referred to as MCEC. And we're really all about supporting military connected children in regards to education, advocacy, and collaborating to resolve those education challenges associated with the military lifestyle. Our vision is that we would love for every military connected child to be college, work, and life ready. And I'm going to have my colleague introduce herself, Marie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marie McGarry, and I am an educator and webinar presenter with MSEC. And I got my start in MSEC in El Paso, Texas. So I'm always happy when I can present to Texas educators. So happy to be with all of you this afternoon. And Terry?
Hi, I'm a military student consultant with with MSEC, and I am happy to be here to support and answer any questions that you have. Purple Star schools are one of my specialty areas. Have a great day.
Wonderful, thanks. And then we have Kim Armstrong, who will be supporting in the chat box today. So we're appreciative of her being here. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Lay to introduce herself.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Just wanted to quickly introduce myself, Dr. Ann Lay, for you. If you don't know who I am, I lead the Military Connected Student Program. So all your technical assistance support requests with Military Connected students or Purple Star, please email us at our Military Connected inbox and we'll be happy to help you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Lay. We appreciate you being here. And thank you for those that are in the chat box putting your names, where you're joining from. We love to see everyone from across the state of Texas. So please continue doing that. We love that so much. So we want to talk just briefly about the collaboration and the partnership that we have with the Texas Education Agency and, of course, MSEC. We're proud to have this 5-part professional learning community series. We're on session 2, so we have 3 more to go. And we have the opportunity to offer professional development training and office hours that will happen after this session today through the fall into the spring of 2026. This is a really great collaborative effort that really underscores that commitment to nurturing a positive educational experience for our military families. And so we are very excited about the collaboration and partnership that we have with TEA. The Purple Star Campus Support PLC series, again, on our next slide, again, just kind of features that flyer that most of you all have probably seen somewhere on social media or received during email. And again, talks about the PLC series and our overall goal of really wanting to provide coaching, support, and strengthen guidance. And so we hope you're able to receive that today. So our learning objectives for this session is we're going to explore demographic data to really better understand the unique characteristics and needs of military connected students. We love data and we're always wanting to be research driven in what we do in regards to our trainings. Review current practices for identifying military connected students and consider ways to enhance that identification process. And then we're going to end with just sharing and discussing some practical strategies for you being able to identify those military connected students, engage with families, staff, and leadership in a meaningful way. And I'm going to turn it over to Marie.
Great, thanks, Nikki. So as Nikki outlined our learning objectives for today, I wanted to share with you that our overarching goal, our big picture goal, is that participants will be able to utilize that military student identifier, that MSI data, to support our military connected students. So I do have a question for you. I'd love to hear from you in the chat box. My question is, do you know which students at your campus are military connected? So I'd love for you to put those responses in the chat box. I'm going to take a look and give you all a minute or two to do that. Seeing lots of yeses, couple of not currently, couple of no's, do not. All right. Great. Thank you so much. Not currently, just some of them. All right, terrific. For those of you that are identifying your military connected students, how does your campus identify military connected students? I see difficult process. So what are some of the ways that you are identifying students? I'd love for you to put that response in the chat box as well. Student enrollment, I see. eSchool Plus. Parent, guardian, self-identifying. So self-identifying, military indicator, part of the registration process, lunch groups. Skyward, that's a new one for me. Student enrollment, registration, self-identifying. Great. All right. So lots of commonality there in that process. Thank you. And we are going to circle back to that about how we can identify those military connected students. It'll be something that we'll circle back again a little bit later in the presentation. So before we do our deeper dive in today, we need to have a common understanding of who our military connected children are in order to provide support to them. On the slide, you will see some statistics from the Department of Defense that were collected in 2023 and released in December of last year regarding our active duty service members, which includes National Guard and Reserves, the ages of those military connected students. So across over 1.5 million military connected students, more than 2/3, about 69%, are 11 years of age or younger. So that's our largest demographic. The smallest group is those military connected students that are 19 to 22 years old. So that's the smallest demographic. So as we work through our time together today, perhaps consider that the largest group of military connected students that are impacted by multiple transitions and separations are those students that are in those early elementary formative years of school. So it's just something to be considering as you're developing programs and working to identify students, that is that largest demographic are children, students 11 years of age and younger. So let's drill down a little bit more and take a look at what is happening in the state of Texas. There are 20 regional education service centers, or ESCs, throughout the state of Texas, and they were established to provide services to school districts throughout the state. The centers are service organizations, not regulatory arms of the Texas Education Agency, and participation by schools in services of the centers is voluntary. Chapter 8 of the Texas Education Code, enacted by the 75th Texas legislature in 1997, specified the following purposes for or of ESCs. Regional Education Service Centers shall assist school districts in improving student performance in each region of the system, enable school districts to operate more efficiently and economically electronically, and implement initiatives assigned by the legislature or the commissioner. Military-connected students reside throughout the state of Texas. On the slide is a list of the education service centers and how many military-connected students are enrolled in schools within their region. Probably no surprise, you can see that Region 20, the San Antonio area, has the highest number of military-connected students. Region 12, Waco, and Region 4, Houston, come in second and third. And that data was collected in the school year 2023-2024 PEAMS October snapshot. So I have another question for you, and I'd love for you to, again, you're doing a great job, share your answer in the chat box. Does your campus or district use an online registration form that includes a way to identify military-connected students? And I know for some of you that'll be a quick yes, because you had indicated that earlier, but if that's not something that you have, please let's share that. So lots of yeses in there. So it's part of that registration process. Great. So if you have identified those students, and a lot of you are indicating that you have, if so, when and how is that first meaningful contact made with those students and their families? And what does that interaction look like? So again, please put your responses in the chat box. So how are you connecting with those? You've identified them, and then where does that first meaningful connection happen with that student or their families? And you can put that in the chat box too. That's a two-part answer, so I'll give you an extra minute or two to get that into the chat box. Almost immediately, I'm seeing back to school night, teachers at the certain welcome letters. When they're using those answers to incorporate them into lunch groups, meet the teacher night, military liaisons, military kids club, MFLEC counselors. Oh, Fiesta, newsletters, open house, love that. That's great. Collaboratives. Terrific. One of the things I think is so meaningful is if some of these ideas pop out at you as something that you would like to incorporate in your school, I think that's great. This sharing is fantastic. The counselor, family nights, meet the teacher. Counselors meeting students right away. And that immediate connection is so important, we know, in helping to ease those transition fears and transition concerns, and help to make them have a meaningful connection and acclimate to that school. Terrific. Great. Thank you so much. You can continue putting those in the chat box and people sharing ideas, but I'm going to turn it back over to Nikki, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the military student identifier.
Yeah, I loved seeing how immediate the contact is in the chat box. So I love that you all are getting that data early on, and it's happening in, meet the teachers, which sometimes is even before school starts. So I love that. So we want to talk a little bit more about the military student identifier, or the MSI, and give a little bit of background, because I feel like sometimes there's a lot of confusion and kind of misconceptions on what that is. And so the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, recognizes military connected students as a distinct subgroup. That MSI defines military connected students as those with a parent who is on an active duty member of the armed forces or on active duty orders. The MSI provides educators with that critical information to personalize those support services for military dependent children, and requires all states to collect and report that assessment data using that MSI. In Texas, the Texas Education Code 25.006 was amended in 2019 to include dependents of the National Guard, reserve forces, and those killed in the line of duty. That MSI data really provides that additional dimension to schools' programming needed to really effectively respond to military connected students as a subgroup and to really include best practices in extending that support to veteran and retiree student and families. And I am a part of a retiree family, so I'm always appreciative that schools are identifying my military connected kiddos. So let's talk a little bit more about the MSI. It really is a unique identifier, and it's a critical tool for ensuring that military connected students receive the support and resources they need to succeed, and really, again, allows K through 12 schools to collect that data regarding enrollment, retention, and academic success. The MSI really enables the school system to do just that. We talk so much about identification. You can't support a student if you don't have them identified, and that really, needs to happen upon enrollment. Best practices for your campus transition program, which is part of that Purple Star campus designation. The evaluation of records and transcripts. Our military families are PCSing, permanent change of duty station, in the summers. And so they're really needing those records and those transcripts evaluated right away, and can really help with academic and mental health screening. And you'll see on the screen, there's an infographic that TEA puts out. This is the updated one. And I love that it's a really great way of just having a snapshot of the MSI and kind of a walkthrough of how that's changed over the years. So next we're going to watch a video, a really just kind of short video that discusses the importance of the MSI and you really kind of that identification that happens in the enrollment process.
Identifying our military-connected students as they enroll is critical to the campus's ability to be able to understand and support the students' unique needs. Registrars and data processors play an important part in properly coding our military-connected students in PEIMS. It is crucial to have district-led training for registrars and data processors at the beginning of the school year, as well as follow-up meetings regularly throughout the school year. Providing regularly scheduled meetings ensures the opportunity to train and follow up with registrars and data processors so they have a clear understanding of the military student identifier and how to properly code military-connected students in PEIMS upon enrollment. It is necessary that all registrars and data processors correctly and promptly enter the information so the campuses have the most current and accurate information for military-connected students. Once the student is fully enrolled and coded properly in PEIMS, the campus-based military liaison should be notified to initiate the campus transition program. The student-to-student program helps to provide a smooth transition for new military-connected students by fostering a sense of belonging and connection upon enrollment.
Okay, I love that video. I think it gives just a really great kind of broad overview of the significance behind the military student identifier and them being properly identified with those PEIMS codes. So here we have some examples of the military student identifier form. I know many of you said earlier that you know that that's being done during that enrollment or registration process. It may be really being done online for the most part, but I love that here is kind of an example of what some of those questions look like. And on the left, we have one that MSEC has designed, just kind of so you can see what that looks like. And on the right, we have an example of a form from an actual campus here in Texas, and features all 6 of those PEIMS codes. So yours may look a little different, but having this form during the enrollment or registration process is really a great time to capture this information. And again, for a lot of you, I know my kids' school registration enrollment's done online, and so it's in an electronic format. But I'd love for you to share if you know what your online registration form or process looks like. So could you share that in the chat box? I would love to know, like, do you know what that looks like when parents are registering or enrolling their kids? And we have, feel free to ask questions in the chat box. We may come back and address them towards the end if like we can't get them um, throughout the course of the session, or we also have our office hours at the end of our PLC2 session that you can stay back and ask more questions. Okay, so it looks like a lot of you said yes. You also have to enroll your kids, so you know what it looks like, similar to the one on the screen. I see a lot of people saying yes. Oh, I have someone saying we usually help parents register so we can see how the forms appear. So I think it's great if you don't know what your online registration questionnaire looks like in regards to the MSI, those PEAMS codes. I would really have you kind of investigate and research that, because I think that could be really helpful for you to know what that looks like. In the chat box, we're putting a FAQ that MSEC's developed about the military student identifier, and so you can use that as a resource. I love a lot of people saying it's a questionnaire during enrollment, and as a parent, you know what it looks like. So I think that's fantastic. So we want to talk a little bit more. I know earlier we talked about how many military connected students are within the regions throughout the state of Texas. We're looking a little bit more at what those students look like based off of PEAMS codes. And so I love that we have this data, and I think it's really great. And so you can see over the past 3 years, there has been significant growth, which really reflects improved identification and reporting practices, but also underscores the increasing importance of targeted support and resources for this population. So you can see from 2023, we had a total of about 199,326 military connected students, to 2025, which is 229,392. So you have almost a 30,000 jump in those numbers of military connected students. So again, proper identification is really, really important. Okay, on our next slide, we want to talk about military connected students and the coding. So again, Texas Education Code 25.006 requires school districts and open enrollment charter schools to collect that data to identify their military connected student population and submit it to the Texas Education Agency. So you can see in the box, the rectangular box on the left-hand side, all 6 of the PEAMS codes, and kind of what that looks like. Students in K through 12, if that student is a dependent of a current or former member of the U.S. military. And we've included Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Space Force, and Coast Guard. The Texas National Guard, which is Army, Air Guard, or State Guard, or a reserve force. Also, the student was a dependent of the U.S. military or reserve force who's fallen in the line of duty. There's also PEAMS codes for our pre-kindergarten students. And I think, as someone who's lived across the U.S. And even around the world, I think it's amazing that there's identification happening at the pre-K level. So you can see that's for a dependent of an active duty member of armed forces of the U.S., including those state military forces or reserve components of armed forces who are ordered to active duty by proper authority, or a dependent of the armed forces of the U.S., including state military forces or reserve component of armed forces who are injured or fallen in the line of duty. I want to just, because there's a few questions about PEAMS code 4, and is pre-K only for military in some places? And I don't know, pre-K, it should be across the board if they fall into that category for PEAMS code 4. So again, I see questions in the chat box, but we'll address those at the end because I know there's a lot with this PEAMS coding. One of the things that we talked about in the video you saw a little bit earlier is that the campus-based military liaison is really encouraged to work collaboratively with the campus teams coordinator, that school counselor, data processor, registrar, or any staff who really ensure all new and currently enrolled students are properly identified and coded through PEAMS. And so it's really important to have that network and collaboration going between those different staff members. I'm going to pass it over to Marie.
Great, thanks. So talking about communication with staff members, I have a question for you. How does your campus or district currently communicate with school leaders and staff when a new military-connected student enrolls? So I'll ask the first part of that question first. So how does your campus or district currently communicate with school leaders and staff when a new military-connected student enrolls? So how is that happening? And then how effective, so it does not. So that answers the second part of the question. How effective is it? No communication. Some are saying the registrar. So that communication is not happening. Not sure. None. Counselor asks, and then the counselor informs the military liaison. Anchored for Life students, provide them with kits. Unsure. All right, somewhat difficult. PEAMS informs us. Okay, 90% military. So we have some folks that have a lot of experience because their military connected students are so high in their district. Some have to access PEAMS themselves to get out that information. Okay. So certainly this is an issue that comes up quite often is, the information gets collected here, but then how does it, to borrow a military term, how does it get to our folks who are boots on the ground, right? Who are interacting with those students so that we can support them and provide programming to address their needs. So we're going to explore this a little bit further with our problem of practice. So our problem of practice is a real case presentation, and it's an opportunity for joint problem solving in this community of practice that is gathered together today. So we are going to give you an opportunity to discuss and to deepen your understanding of the situation. And then we'll ask you to share reflections or recommendations regarding this problem. And then at the end of the session, we're going to come back together and talk about some recommendations for the group. Because we have a large group today, which is fantastic, we are going to break out in just a few minutes into smaller breakout rooms. So we'll have an opportunity to have that discussion. But before we do that, I want to provide you with an overview of the case, the problems of practice, and some of the questions that we'll be exploring. So a little bit of background on the case study. We have a campus that's located near a military installation, and they serve a diverse student population with a high percentage of military connected students. However, and this seems to be something that lots of you are experiencing as well, the campus has struggled to accurately identify and support these students due to a lack of clear identification methods. And this often results in a lack of comprehensive support for these students. So some of the challenges that are being faced by this particular campus is the first one is accurate identification. So we have a list of those on the next slide. The students are not being identified due to an unclear process. So accurately identifying the students is the first challenge. The second challenge is that reporting and notification methods. The staff on campus don't know who their military connected students are because that information is not being shared, or there's not an effective method to share that information. And then the last challenge is how can we implement effective support? A lack of academic, social, and emotional support programs due to not having the data gathered on these students. We know as educators that data drives programs. So if we don't have that data collected, we are kind of held back from providing and developing the appropriate programs that they need. So the questions that we are going to consider in the group, if you want to, jot these down, your group leaders will have them as well. So some of the things that we are going to consider is, how can a campus develop a clear, standardized process to identify our military connected students? Is some other things to consider, is PEAMS coding crucial in this process? Is it training of staff? Is it a combination of both? So those might be some questions to consider and think about. Another question is, what system can be used to notify campus staff of military connected students on campus? And again, why is this so important? And then finally, what are some ways that a campus can gather data from military connected students and their families to develop targeted support programs? So how can we hear from them about what types of programs and support that they would find most helpful? So those are our 3 questions. So in a minute, you will, a little talk bubble appear on your screen, inviting you to go into one of the breakout rooms. So just click on that, and we will have some discussion for about 15 minutes or so, I think, Nikki, and then come back together.
Great. Thanks, Marie. You should have a prompt to go into your breakout rooms. Okay, welcome back. For those that are joining back, I think we have everyone back with us. Okay. Wonderful. I think everyone's been joined back. And so I would love to have someone from each group. If you remember what room you were in, I know I was in room 3. One person from each group kind of share what they talked about. So for that first question, of how can a campus develop a clear, standardized process to identify military connected students? Anyone that was in room 1, would they like to unmute and share with the group? Or even if you're not in room 1, you can share.
Nikki, I already forgot which room I was in.
I know. I was like, it doesn't matter your room. If anybody would like to share, actually, let's just open it up for the 3 questions that we talked about. Would anyone like to unmute and share just one thing that you chatted about in your group? I know I could share for room 3, but anyone like to just unmute and share something that you discussed?
My group just looked at, we were just trying to see like the questionnaire and reaching out for the annual enrollment, what those questions for our military connected students are. And I talked about how there were different versions of it across most of the districts that I kind of viewed and on their web pages and things like that. So we discussed making sure that those questionnaires align to the current PEAMS coding to be absolutely clear for parents as well, so they understand what it is that they are checking yes or no to.
For my group, for group 1, lots of great discussion. One of my favorite things is there was an email exchange because somebody was doing something that someone else in the group really liked, and so they were going to share that form, which was fantastic. So I want to brag on them a little bit. But one of the key points was that identification piece, and really trying to get that in place, and then hoping that the other things will follow. One thing that was interesting that someone brought up is with the PEAMS coding. She said that the example that we gave, there's extra codes in there that indicate maybe someone that's working at the post office or something else, or not military identified. And so she wasn't sure if there was like a standardized PEAMS form, or if her district chose to add in a couple of other questions, because what she's having to do is then go and really look at individual folders to see who's actually military connected. So that was a question that came up.
Yeah, that's a great question. And maybe they are capturing some other groups of individuals in their questionnaire. And I was in room 3, and again, I think probably everyone was talking about identification. I had a lady that was talking about they have a huge number of military connected students whose parents are either veterans or retirees, and that information isn't being captured or they're not being identified. And so they're identifying the active duty, they're identifying the National Guard and the Reserve and the killed in the line of duty, but not the veterans and the retirees. And so, she said, we've got some work to do. And so I said, that's okay. Yeah. Anyone else like to share before we move on?
I was in room 4, and when we talked about the second question, the system that can be used to notify campus staff of military connected students on campus, we talked about the various forms of communication that a lot of schools use, that they can communicate between each other, like Remind or Parent Square or whatever. Those can be used to communicate with other staff members. But the more important thing that we talked about was why it was important, and just the fact that, military students are coming and going throughout the school year, not just at one time of the year. And very often they need some help being acclimated into the school system. It's also very helpful to teachers, especially, to know if a student is military connected. And let's say they're having a behavior issue with that student, while the child's being military connected certainly doesn't excuse behavior, but it might explain that behavior and be helpful in arriving at a solution to solving problems with those military students. So it's important for many reasons. That's just one of the ones that we talked about.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Terry, so much. And I will say, just to wrap up the comments from the questions, one of the things that was talked about in our group, and you made me think about this, is, this is all part of a self-identification process, right? The parent has to identify via questionnaire during registration enrollment. And what about the families that aren't doing that? And so I think that's where we talk about at MSEC, really creating that supportive environment about, we're here to advocate for your child, to support them, to provide resources, and really talking with your community, parents and students, about why we want to know that you're military connected. And I think sometimes the why is really important for parents to understand. So thank you so much. We hope you had a really nice time being able to kind of collaborate and talk within the breakout sessions. We think that's really an important piece of this professional learning community. So some of the recommendations on the next slide. So for the military student identifier recommendations, or that, why we really can be helpful in knowing who our military connected students are, is schools can regularly disaggregate assessment results within that school system. And so, that's really helpful, a great reason for identifying the students. You can include this information in school report cards. So I know a lot of us are, very data driven. And so I think that information is great, that you can kind of have that in your report card. Here's how many military connected students we have in these different categories. Feeds into that demographic and performance data to determine program effectiveness. So this goes to that Purple Star campus designation. Really knowing who your military connected students are is really important. And again, it really provides an additional dimension that more finely attunes to the school's programs to respond to the needs of those students. And a few more recommendations. The MSI is really essential to improving and personalizing that academic as well as that social and emotional responses that are really unique to military connected students. So it's going to help design your program and create those best practices. Schools could consider military connected students again as that unique subgroup when you're planning your curriculum design, your welcoming practices, transition planning. If you have any kind of extra programs like tutoring programs, a lot of people talked about maybe special, either like a lunch buddy or a lunch club group that you have that you formulated for them. And lastly, really provides local education agencies with quality, actionable data concerning your military connected students. So just consider the MSI as an opportunity to really improve those programs and resources that you are trying to provide for your military connected students. And it really starts with identification. That's kind of that first step. Some recommended strategies that we have: ensuring that MSI, that PEIMS codes are in the questionnaire upon enrollment. I know, again, in my group, a couple of individuals were like, I think we have some work to do with our questionnaire, right? And changing that. Providing training for your school registrars, your data processors, your PEIMS clerks on a biannual basis can be helpful. Utilizing that school and district webpage to educate parents and advocate for the use. Someone in our group talked about how they had some parents that saw some posts online about military connected kids being celebrated and recognized. And then that, had parents calling in like, why wasn't my kid in that group? My kid's military connected. And the conversation was had that they hadn't identified that they were. So again, educating parents is really important. Establishing standard operating procedures for how you use your annual MSI data and collection upon enrollment, and then publishing that data within the school and your community stakeholders. And I think that goes back to kind of that school report card, which a lot of military connected families are looking, they're researching, they're going to your web pages, they're looking all of that up. So put it out there, all of that data that you have. Okay, some additional resources and tools that we have. Our first one is the Supporting Military Connected Students and Professional Development tool. This is a great resource that offers practical guidance for supporting military connected students throughout the school year. If you have not had the opportunity to take the Purple Star Rise course, the TEA Learn course, it's really great, and it's got a lot of these resources, these tools kind of included within them. And so this is a great one, and we'll put that link in the chat box for a great resource. And I'm going to turn it over to Marie.
Great. Thanks. As we wrap up today, we just wanted to share with you our next PLC session will be on developing a Purple Star Advisory Committee, and that will be held on November 19th, again, the same time, from 2 to 3:30 p.m. with that half an hour for office hours, Central Standard Time. And so we would encourage you and invite you to attend that. And then the next 2 sessions following is on January 21st for activities and event planning. And then February 18th, we'll wrap up with preparing for redesignation. So Kim is putting some links in the chat box. The first one is if you have already registered. You don't have to register again. That first link is for the Zoom link for the next session. And then the second link, if you have not yet registered, or if you want to share and invite someone else to join you for our next session, that is that second link there. So, and then we will also look for follow-up emails about our Padlets and other information. So we want to just spend our last few minutes together doing a little bit of reflecting on our session. So I would like you to consider the following questions. I'd love for you to put these, your responses in the chat box. The first is, 3 insights that you've gained from today's session. We'd love for you to share those. 2 actions that you will take to assist your district and campus with identifying military connected students, and then 1 topic that you would like to learn more about at our next session. So we'll give you the last couple minutes of our time together to put those answers into the chat box. So 3 insights you've gained, 2 actions that you will take, and then 1 topic you would like to learn about more at our next session. And while you're doing that, we will go back to this slide so you have those questions. But we did just want to share with you the next slide. And that is a link to our Padlet. And this is all of the information that we'll be sharing from the different sessions together. This allows us another opportunity to collaborate with one another. So check back to this regularly for updates and additions. And then please, we'd encourage you to check back on this. There's lots of great information on there. So you can use that QR code. And we also have a link in the chat box as well. Vicki?
Okay, thanks, Marie. So we're really excited to be able to introduce something that we really worked really hard on and are, again, really excited about. In November, we are going to recognize that service and sacrifice, as well as strength of our nation's veterans and families who support them. And so we have worked together, MSEC and TEA, to provide this toolkit to help schools, educators, and communities across our state join in honoring military connected students and families. So you can scan that QR code, or you can also click on the link. And there's some great social media graphics and some prompts that you can use. Email signatures have been designed. And so you can kind of incorporate that either in your newsletters. If you do emails, there's an email portion that you can use. And so it's just a really great toolkit, again, for the month of November. And we would love for you on the Padlet we talked about on the previous slide to, once you access that Padlet, if you are planning to celebrate your veterans and your military families in November, and you have an event or an activity that you're doing, we'd love for you to share that on that Padlet, some of the things that that you're doing. I know most schools do something for Veterans Day, and so that's usually a great one. Okay, and lastly, we would love your feedback. We appreciate you attending this second session of our PLC. We hope that it was informative. We hope that you were able to walk away with some additional information that you didn't have before. And so you can scan that QR code, or you can click on the link in the chat box. You'll also receive this in an email after the session. To just let us know how we did and your experience for today's session. I know someone's asked previously, we do record this, and so that recording will be found on the TEA website. And so we have a link for that, as well as a PDF of the slide deck. So that will be on there as well. As a matter of fact, I think it's already on there. And so we'll share those links. Again, thanks for joining us. For all of you that asked questions that we weren't, I was trying to answer some, but I was like, we just can't. Please stay on for our office hours, which will start after this recording ends, after this session. And then we will answer all of those questions the best that we can. So again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.